This Sunday is designated as World Marriage Day. What I hope to do is to spark your imagination, to, in effect, cause every person here, especially those of you who are married, to imagine your life 40, 50, 60, or more years from now, and to picture yourself at the end of your days, looking back at your life and seeing and knowing that you were not only deeply loved, but that you loved deeply. And then to make a decision to live your life right now. And for those of you who are married, making the decision to love your spouse and your family right now with that end in mind. Just before Christmas, I met with a gentleman who, as it turns out, had a few friends in common with me, although we had never met before. This gentleman had a successful career as a lawyer and was a partner in a local law firm. And we spent more than an hour just talking. We didn't talk about his successes. We didn't talk about his long career as a lawyer. We spent that hour and more talking about his 52 years of life and love with his wife, who had recently passed away. He felt a deep need to talk about what he felt was and is one of the most meaningful experiences of his life. And he mentioned to me how even though his wife is now gone, he can't stop loving her. And as we talked about their life together and how real his love for her remains in her heart, in his heart, I began to realize something. That what he was sharing with me was that sort of love that God ordained for marriage from the beginning of time. The man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And it is this sort of lifelong love that young couples promise to each other when they vow, I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. So this man, after 52 years of marriage, was able to look back and remember a love that filled him with a lifetime of shared faith and precious memories. But not just memories. It fills him with a love that remains with him even today. So how does that happen? How do spouses live out their married lives in such a way that with the passing of their loved one, the other can be consoled by a love that endures even after their passing? It doesn't happen by chance. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intentionally loving each other in the moment, regardless of what the moment might bring. It happens by renewing the promise to love each other every day. It happens by living and loving with the end in mind. Dr. Stephen Covey coined the phrase, beginning with the end in mind. And he used it as one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. The theme of living with the end in mind has been a tried and a true Christian concept. But it's so much more than a concept, and it's so much more than a theme. It is at its core a way of seeing what cannot be seen, and it's a way of striving to be what might not yet be. And it is what every Christian, whether engaged, married, widowed, divorced, or single, are created for and called to love God with all of our heart, our mind, our soul, and with all of our strength, and to love the other as ourselves. This total, selfless love is what marriage is called to be. And while certainly it's not easy, as any married couple can attest to, it is the very thing that can totally transform the culture. St. John Paul II, who's known by many as the Pope of the family, and he once said that as the family goes, so goes the nation, and so goes the whole world in which we live. But our lives, our marriages, and our families cannot transform the culture if they look and they act like the culture. Our faith, our Catholic faith, is unlike anything else in the world. There has never been anything devised by man that can equal to it. Now, this is not some triumphalistic proclamation. It is an acknowledgement that the Catholic faith offers to every individual, to every couple, to every marriage and every family, the key and the remedy to what ails the culture and the world. It is a living encounter with Jesus through the power of the Holy Spirit, the power that is ever present in the sacraments of the Church. Then why is it that so many are impacted and influenced more by the power of the culture than by the power of the graces made available through the sacraments? Well, there's many reasons for this. One is that simply receiving a sacrament will not necessarily unleash the power of the sacrament. And another reason is that we're fallen human beings. And because that is true, we're inclined. In fact, we're tempted by sin. And God knows that there are endless opportunities for sin in our life. The cultural slippery slope has steadily eroded fundamental Christian values. Our culture not only confuses the relationship between spouses, but has totally distorted the sacred meaning of marriage and the value of a holy family. So what might be the underlying reason for why there is a disproportionate influence of the culture in our marriages and in our families? It is not that the graces of the sacraments are missing in our lives. It is that the power available in those graces are not active in our lives. What is certain is that the reception of a sacrament does, in fact, provide us with God's grace. But the truth is, that's not enough. It's like a farmer who has a piece of ground and he has everything necessary to plant his garden. But he leaves his tools and the seeds and the fertilizer sitting in his barn. And as a result of not using what was available to him, the ground remains barren and instead becomes a place filled with weeds and thorns. Well, we can be like that farmer. And our soul is that plot of ground. And we are given through the sacraments all that we need to have the most beautiful and the most blessed life. But it won't happen if we don't make use of the power of God's sacramental grace within us. Because unless we are open to it, consciously and intentionally tapping into that power, our soul remains a barren place. And a soul that is uncared for is in deep peril. Because if it's left unattended, St. Luke tells us, demons will gather together and they will enter in, and the state of the soul will be worse than before. My brothers and sisters, I believe that the reason why many families, many marriages, many individuals find life so empty and so difficult is because the soul of many marriages and the soul of many families and the soul of many individual persons have not allowed the power of God's sacramental grace to unfold, inspire, and bless their lives. St. Paul tells us that our faith is not to rest on the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. And Paul continues to teach us that we have not received the spirit of the world, but the Spirit which is from God, that we might understand the gifts bestowed on us by God. Paul is telling us that the power of the Holy Spirit, which is the power of God's grace, has been bestowed on us and is within us. Why then are we so often unable to access that power, that sacramental power? It's because the way of the world has taken root in many of our lives. And as a result, we've become incapable of discerning that which is spiritual. So how do we, as a people of God, unleash the power of the Holy Spirit in our personal lives, in our married lives, and in our families? We do so first by not settling for a life that is less than what God created us for. We do it by cultivating a life of prayer and through a total surrendering of our lives to God alone and seeking the help and the intercession of the Holy Family. But it has to be intentional. It has to be complete, because there is no room for God in a heart that is filled with the ideologies of the world or is satisfied with less than God. To everyone here, whether you're single, engaged, married, widowed, or divorced, I urge you to make the commitment today to live and to love with the end in mind. And I want to reach out to anyone here who may have been married outside the church. Whether it's a first marriage or a civil union after a divorce, know that no matter where you have been or what has transpired in your life in the past, the hope and the desire of the church is to walk with you so that you might be filled with the grace and the power available in a sacramental marriage. And so please reach out to me or to Deacon Steve or to any of the priests, because we'd love to sit down and talk with you whenever possible, not to judge your past, but to allow you to begin anew with the end in mind. And so next week, you'll see on the cover of your bulletin that the Knights of Columbus will offer the opportunity for each of us to consecrate ourselves, especially our marriages and our families, to the intercession and the care of the Holy Family. And so to prepare for this, the Knights will be at all the exits to hand out a prayer card that will help us to prepare ourselves for the consecration to the Holy Family next week. Please take a prayer card and let us all be very intentional in taking the time to prayerfully ask God to unleash the Holy Spirit in our life and in the life of our parish family. Because a family who prays together stays together.